going to have some great founders on stage here. So as Michelle was actually saying before, naming all the reasons why startups fail, I think the next 4 people are just going to be talking about why they don't care. So they're just the ones that look over these reasons. They're really going to tell the stories of the realities of building a startup, probably the worst parts of it, and the real kind of blood and sweat that goes into actually making it happen. So as was said on the stage before, that's 10 years of work that makes you an overnight success. So we're going to actually start with, come on stage already, Josipa. She's the founder and CEO of a really, really cool thing. It's, as she just said to me off stage, it's like putting the most simple things, that is toys, together with the most complex things, that is neurological brain things. And she's going to tell you more about it. But why I like her story that much is that she actually started when she was 22. She's from Zagreb, from Croatia. And I'm really sure that this is only the start of her story. So she's here to tell you all about it.
Thank you. Just the clicker it's here. Okay, thank you. So hello everyone. My name is Josipa, but anyone who's not from Croatia calls me Jos. And I'm the founder and CEO of ID Guardian. And I'll tell you a short personal story, startup war story of how you go into why on earth would you make a smart teddy, and then what do you do next. So basically, my story is all about, as you heard in the introduction, I was 22, I was a student in Croatia, in Zagreb, beautiful country, very poor economy. I didn't have a working day of experience, but then all of a sudden we simply wanted to make something that would help children in pediatric departments, and we went from that to becoming a Fortune 500 suppliers with our product used on 6 continents, which some would say is an interesting evolution of the situation. So first of all, our first product was a smart teddy bear. So when kids would play with our toy, we would get their heart rate, oxygen level, and body temperature in 2 to 4 seconds on a mobile app. Now, the question that people often ask us is that why would you do it? The reason is that kids don't understand medical devices. When you go into a traditional hospital and you introduce a medical device, kids usually get stressed out, and that stress skews the data. So you get higher temperature, higher heart rate than usual, and then you have a data problem. You would now ask, how do you go from being a student to putting actual sensors and actual toys and then selling them? Well, we initially built a pediatrician's mobile app, so we wanted to help doctors manage their patients. But when we were there, we noticed that the main problem was not the app, it wasn't the doctors, it was the kids that didn't understand medical devices. They simply wanted something that's more friendlier and more easy to understand. The nurses were there, they used toys to animate kids and then trick them into giving them a medical device. And all we did was say, why don't you put the sensors in the toy? And that's it, we just saved time. Well, we did that, and we saved a lot of time, and this is where our first really big lesson showed up, and this is then a theme in our company, which is listening to feedback is really crucial, but then also doing the work afterwards is even more crucial. The theme of you having an idea, let's say to build an app for a pediatrician, is really noble, it's your baby, you feel so emotionally attached to it, but once you put it in the wild, almost always it never works the way you planned, and you have to alter your entire product, everything you built so far. The problem with that is that you don't really feel like it. You already invested a lot of time and energy to put that initial product on the market. You don't want to change it all and over again. Well, at that point, we had the little guy, the teddy, and we were like, okay, so that's a bit more simple. People understand it. A lot of parents wanted to buy it immediately as soon as they saw it. So the only thing we have to do now is to build it, which sounds really simple. We got a seed investment from angel investors in London, and we put the teddy on the market. It was interesting, it was fun, but then what happened next? We got a bunch of emails and a bunch of feedback from especially first-time parents in Western countries that said, we need more toys. So it's really fun that you have a teddy, but my child doesn't really love teddies. They love different types of toys. And my child doesn't really have those problems that your sensors tackle. They have different problems. At that point, we decided to build more toys, which sounds really simple, but then again, you go through the entire situation of having to build something, leaving your little baby behind, building it once again, and the result from that was the Guardian Animals, which is a smart toy line where each toy has a superpower and measures something. So our toy line had a tall giraffe, Teddy the Guardian, and Brave Lion. Tall giraffe measures your posture and how many steps you make through the day. The Brave Lion gives you detailed analytics about your cardio health data, so everything about your heart. And the Teddy is the warm creature. When you hug it, you know your body and skin temperature. This is how they all look like. This is how much they cost. But then there was another situation, which, as I said, is basically a theme in everything we do. And this is that we got another round of feedback from also our customers, so the parents, and they were like, listen, this is really interesting and this is really nice, we love it. But can our kids just build the toys themselves? Why wouldn't they learn something while they use your toys? So they're not necessarily toddlers, they're a bit older, but can it be something like an educational tool? And at that point, we took the hardware from our toys and we made it a standalone product, which is that you can turn any object into a biosensing device and you can measure almost any biometric data needed. And you can build the app in 10 minutes with no previous coding knowledge whatsoever. The idea is, could kids build their own toys? And more importantly, could they build their own solutions if they know which problems they have? Now that led us to going to partnering with Vodafone and the United Nations and to going in the biggest refugee camps in the world. This was shot in Kakuma in Africa, so on the border of Kenya and South Sudan. And this is where teenage girls from all over that region build their own health solutions that are actually used in their villages and in their camps. So they don't have sophisticated equipment. The only thing they have is the tablets that the company provided, and they basically use our apps on a daily basis to monitor everything from fitness to wellness and then actual health data. And this is then the situation where we sort of took a break and said, you know, this is an amazing thing. You know, we have a consumer portfolio, it's going pretty well, we're cash flow positive, we're doing something nice that's a bit more oriented towards the society in general, and we just sort of feel very content with our position. And that's when another round of feedback happened. And at this point, we weren't sure if we were either desperate or really happy. But basically, corporate customers came along and they asked us, could they use all of the sensors that we build to build basically a affective computing lab where they can quantify emotional reactions of consumers and for everything they're building. So can they build like a device that can know how our body is feeling at any point in time, to be specific, how are they feeling health-wise, how are they feeling emotional-wise, and how are they feeling cognitive workload-wise. So this is where the neuroscience comes in, which is basically when we decided to build really complex neuroscience tools and sell it to PhD-level customers in big corporates. It turns out we basically built a solution that monitors 11 biometric data points. So everything from how you talk, how you walk, how you sit, how your brain is responding, your heart is responding, your skin. And all of this is a sleek modular system that can be built in anywhere at any time and at a pretty low cost. The reason why the solution was a bit different is because the devices were sleek, they were mobile, and they were much more cheaper than anything that was on the market. And it was scalable, because everything we built previously was scalable and it was built for kids. And all of the results were seen in real time, so it was pretty simple and pretty easy. And the result was the largest independent database on consumer sentiment that we basically self-funded with our partners. Now at this point, people were asking us, how on earth do you go from being a student in a pretty, not so startup-y friendly country like Croatia, building toys for kids, to selling neuroscience tools to big corporates? And the answer is basically, we're not sure ourselves. It's a pretty rocky situations. We had a lot of situations where we didn't know whether we were going to survive or thrive. And luckily for us, we actually survived. And these are now the customers that use our products on a regular basis. So all the biggest companies, from really traditional ones to technologically advanced ones. And we're present in over 40 countries with all of the tools that we have. So this is our sort of global map. And the result is a profitable company. We have a pretty diverse portfolio, meaning we sell both to customers and to businesses, and we have some of our proprietary IP. But now the summary is basically the takeaway from this entire journey. And I'm sure you all know, you really don't need any capital, any infrastructure to start. But that, on one side, that's a very positive thing. On the other side, that really gives you sort of an ADHD, because if everything is so cheap and everything is so easy to do, which ideas do you actually implement? You can basically have a new product each week. How do you actually create a profitable company and a good product that sells? This is where the second piece of information comes in, which is we discovered that being agile is really important, but also listening to customers. Again, something you all know, but you really have to pick through which are the ones who can actually pay enough so that it's actually profitable for you to build a product, and which are the ones who just want to be a part of the startup journey because it's something that's interesting for them, it's something that's fun, and they just want to be a part of a wider success story. And then third, and most importantly for us, is that you have to find a niche and you really have to master it. If I was talking to, say, my parents or someone from the older generation and telling them, we've built tools, we use medical sensors, and then we build effective computing labs that are used by research departments from a lot of the major Fortune 500 companies, they would say they have no connections whatsoever. But our main niche and our main connection was biometric data. And that's the part that we actually focused on from start till the end. So everything where there's biometric data, we believe that we can provide additional value, and our customers believe it too, which is why they buy. So in summary, I guess you all know, but maybe it's sometimes useful to remind yourself, you can really start off with absolutely nothing, but if you listen to the right customers and implement the right feedback, pick a niche, we've somehow managed to build a profitable, sort of successful company. I'm guessing you should do the same. So that'll be all for me today. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, excellent. So, quick question. During the startup, what has been the most hardest thing you have? The hardest moment, what has it been?
I think one of the speakers before me said it's one of those moments where you're not sure you should quit or pivot.
Yeah.
You probably noticed we've had quite a few pivots.
Yeah.
And every time you have a pivot, everything in your body is telling you to either quit or to stick with the original plan. But the money and the business is actually showing you you should evolve and you should go to the next level.
So you go against your gut feeling?
It's a gut feeling, but a bit of data included as well. So, for example, in our case, we had individual customers who would purchase a product for 100 euros, or we had big corporates who spent hundreds of thousands of euros each month on our service. So it was sort of a no-brainer.
Okay. And what has been the most surprising thing you found out, which was like really wow, and a positive, I mean?
Yeah, I think if you build a really simple, really easy to understand consumer product, in our case, it's a toy. It can even be an effective B2B marketing tool. So most of our meetings with really big companies start off by showing how simple biometric tools can be, and they can be simple as a teddy. So I would use consumer marketing tools to businesses because at the end, we're all humans, and what works on kids works on businesses as well. So.
Okay. Let's have a couple of questions from the audience as well. Does anybody have a question? Just raise your hand. They will throw you with this square mic. It doesn't hurt, really. Yes, there is a question here in front, please. Wow.
Did I get it right that basically you did not produce yourself anything, you just took a bunch of different things, combined them, made an additional value and sold them with higher price?
So yeah, just to explain that a bit, no, we actually produced every single piece of technology that goes in every of our products. So we first built consumer sensors for our consumer line. We sold those, we've patented those, so it's all proprietary tech. Then we moved and evolved that technology into a bit more sophisticated for businesses, and then we solved that as well. So to answer your question, it's all of our technology from hardware, software, to the algorithms used in each of our products. The idea initially was to take a sensor off the shelf, which if anyone ever tried to do that, it's not a very smart idea. You will not go, you will not do anything smart with that, so just stop right away. But we ended up building most of the tech, which is why we have these B2B customers today, because of our tech.
Thank you, Josipa. Give her a big applause. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
So, make it 14. The next person on the stage is... Somebody's talking there. You can really hear them well. Okay, they switched them off. So next person on the stage is somebody who's, in my personal opinion, the craziest Estonian startup founder. As a matter of fact, we sat together with him once in Nigeria as kidnapped for a while. Please welcome on the stage Ragnar Sass, the co-founder of Pipedrive and Clanbeat today. Ragnar.
Thank you.
You
Thank
crazy
you,
guy.
man. Hello. So today I'm not talking about products, and I'm not talking about investors or other things. I'm talking about today humans. I basically talk about the darkest side, what means to being founder if something goes wrong badly. Because I think that we have to understand one thing. All companies, all startups is run by people. And if you start a company, you might not have any idea how tough it can be. So first, yeah, I will, because it's conference, you know, even my good friend Preet did the best intro ever. I will just tell a few things about me before jumping into the main topic today. So, yes, I'm co-founder of Garage 48, which is a great hackathon series. And just one thing, 2015, we was in Minsk. We had another hackathon. Eugene and his friends showed up in fifth time. And 3 months later, they sold the company for 100 million, which was started in Garage 48 hackathon. I believe that Garage 48 is the most effective hackathon series in the world. I'm very proud that we started this 2010 together with Preet and 3 other guys. I'm also co-founder of Lift 99, and I hope everybody knows that today we have after party in the Lift 99 in the Telliskivi. And the reason why I'm doing it, actually, I will tell later. I happen to be extremely happy to being founder of the Pipedrive, which this is the photo what is now going on. We have to build a bigger building so we can fit everybody in. So clearly, I have done some things. And but maybe reason why I'm doing this talk is my last startup, Clanbeat, because I started a year ago a company which is focusing how to build stronger relations in the companies between managers and employees. And the more we looked at, because of that, I have been talking with scientists, with the best leaders in the world last 6 months and so. So I have been more and more dived in like human's mind. What is our wellness in here and how we basically act as we act in the workplace, private life and so on. Amazing experience, and this basically was giving me input to give very different topic today. And let's jump into the time machine. It's 2010, and I was in my first startup, which is United Dogs and Cats. I happen to be actually really loving humans. I really love to work with people, really loving, but I also love dogs. So we did startup which was doing like a Facebook, but for your dog and cat. It sounds very silly, isn't it? But you know what is the secret? In this room, I assume at least 40% actually are also pet owners. Actually, maybe here less because it's too technical. But if we jump into the Europe or US, every second household have at least one pet. There are definitely need for that, what we did. So we was running this business. We did amazingly many mistakes. I did like so many mistakes you can imagine. I did all of them, most likely. This is my dog. One of the key, I don't even know how to say, persons in my life. Because I don't think that he's like, animal. He has been really team member. And he has followed me in my, how many companies? 4 companies. So he has met with Estonian Prime Minister. He has met with Estonian President. So I don't think there is no any other dog who has been privileged to being in so good crowd. The problem with that company was that we failed. And we failed in the most painful way you can ever imagine. Because the good thing with our hackathon, so we call it even, go to the hackathon and fail bigly, and you will not be killed later on. So we are just telling in Garage Void, that's the best platform where you can fail. Because the startups can end badly. And this is actual letter, which I'm showing you now, without names, just giving you the context, how bad it was. This letter is from my investor. Replied to me when I basically, in the all human way, when we had already like basically almost hit to the wall, I was telling him why I think that we failed. I was trying to do in the most objective way, even this is close to impossible. It's very polite way saying, fuck you, just get lost, you are a fucking loser. In polite way, by the way. But that's not all. The next thing what happened was article in SD Express. Media jumped in. And that's something what happens that if you read it, which basically tells that I was leading company to bankruptcy, which by the law means that you are criminal. Just to being very correct now, because as this is article, I have to clear facts. Sadly, United Dogs never went to bankruptcy. It was, this investor took it over, and it just kind of disappeared. But this article led my life many years. Because if something is in newspaper, then everybody can Google and read it. Because of this article, I was banned for many things. So after these rough times, I basically just took a ride from Peru to Paraguay by this motorcycle. It happens to be one of the most dangerous roads in the world, by the way. I was almost killed twice because it's just no one gives a shit when you're in motorcycle and you are in the big truck. It's just bump happens, okay, whatever. But I actually survived, and I kind of like, it was my first test that, come on, biggest happiness ever that I'm alive, even though my image is broken and it's very hard to build it. So because of this experience, because I have to clear fact now, I actually really cared. There was not this thing said, fuck this shit, I just done it, Because I let down, basically, 400,000 United Talks users. I let down my team. I had the amazing team. And when someone basically points finger at you, when you are bleeding and saying you are fucking loser, this can hit extremely hard. And it did with me. I have not told it ever publicly before, but I can say now because it's just looking the past. But I was in the darkest depression inside of me many years. The problem is, I am not alone. By the latest survey, which was done in US by some scientists, 30% of all founders has been in depression. Once more, every third founder has been in depression. What's even more mind-blowing, 70% of founder families have mental issues. 70%. Because once more, the thing what you do is impossible. And you have to fight every day against everything, basically. I have learned to get no's positive. I have learned so many things out of that journey. But these facts are mind-blowing. And sometimes, I'm the lucky one. Sometimes things can end super badly. A few years ago, one brilliant guy who was building how to print out DNA had a speech about his investment on the stage of Silicon Valley. For some reason, media took it wrongly. So I was writing articles that this guy is sexist, and basically they destroyed his image with one article. He was co-founder of a company, Cambrian Genomics, and he was cut off of fundraising immediately. His lawyer called him, said, I can't give you money because you are like a, whatever, like sexual criminal now. This article was wrong. And this guy, sadly, ended with suicide. How many people know Reddit? Please raise hands. Thanks. Do you know Reddit co-founder also ended with suicide? So these things are real. This pressure is intense, and no one's talk about that. Because the image of startup life is too much that you just work 24 hours and you are successful and you are just a robot. But we are humans. We all have our weaknesses daily. So that's why I talk about depression today here. Because I'm sick of one thing. I have worked actually in media before I jumped into the startup life. Wrong time. So I am so sad sometimes how media is just making up the things because it sells. If someone's closing the doors, say I immediately thinking about a criminal case. Even later it has proved differently. You can't be successful without testing out the things and failing. And I don't know so far any criminal case in startup life. There is indeed somewhere, but I happen to know people who are not criminals. So it means that how we can fix this, how I fix this, that I can start today here and talk about it. Community. That's why I did Lifty9, which is the co-working when we do events, when we speak things, and when we support entrepreneurs who are going through these rough things. This helped me to understand I am not alone. It helped me to reading other founder stories to speak with them and so on. It helped me heavily. I was extremely lucky that 2010, when my one startup failed, I founded 2 other things. So I was doing things all the time, keep going, not staying on the corner. This saved me. These people basically saved me that I am like here talking and I don't have any problem with that anymore, which I had a few years ago. Pietilä co-founders, 2 of them was with me in United Talks. They did know everything from inside. Urmas and Tivo believed me despite of the media, despite of the things what was sent around. After United Talks, I also basically switched that I need to do the sport. And that's the case actually. In startup life, you're like in the storm with your yacht. One day you have the best wind ever, but next day you start from the zero. And the pressure, if you want to go company into the highest, if you want to compete with Salesforce, Google, and so on, is intense. That's why I think that in my case, I'm doing very often sport. This is photo when I finished marathon in Santiago. I was just training 7 weeks. It was extremely hard. But this habit really is important because your body, you need to let this pressure out. Other thing which I have learned, that we actually have everyday positive moments. We are winning every day if you just look around. If you collect those things, if you write down and you have the culture, celebrating success, then it helps you to go through with that hard times. Because believe me, if you're building a company, you will see that 80% of the times you feel that you most likely will end up in bad corner. Writing down your wins and celebrating success is the key thing which helps you to being, no, I am someone. I do right things. We actually have success already in some meaning. And you know, guys, just it's so hard for the founders and those people just get out of internet, just disappear for whatever. But it's so important. Recently, I was deleting half notifications in my mobile phone because it's just killing me. It's just another email and so on that you need to immediately reply. You don't. And this thing, if you don't take break, if you just go away, even your founder and CEO will kill your body and mentality. So indeed, everybody should have your family and your closest friends and so on. In my case, my dog, I think that has been the closest thing in my 7 years with my friends and relatives and so on. But I'm just honestly, like, you can't imagine how much animal, which is, I can't say it, animal has helped me because he's always around and, his official title has been in many companies, Chief Happiness Officer. Because, the simple thing, he's always happy when he sees you. How easy is that? You can go to the home and something bad happened. He's just, wow, you are here. I love it. So basically, every day I have always positive moments when I see this creature. I know one thing, people are not talking about this thing. But there are many people who has felt those things and found feelings. I have met some founders, but that's why we do those conferences in Lift 99. But just last thing, you can reach me. I'm always happy if someone has similar things to show. I always find that time to just speak with you and so on. Because that's the first step. Because why I'm so freaked out sometimes is founders are usually the most brilliant people. They just go against of everything. And we as a society should keep them, save them, so they can do next thing and so on. And Nordic country like Estonia, we are anyway, come on, we have the worst weather in the world anyway. That's why we need to support each other. Because our human capital is not growing, you know. We're opening borders, we have more brilliant minds, but still, let's help to save people who has gone through with the dark times. Don't throw them into the street and bus saying, this guy is a loser. Please, believe me, many of those can be successful in second or third or fourth time. Thank you.
Wait, just before, I actually work with Ragnar every day when he's not somewhere in the world in another time zone. I think the main thing that I've actually learned from Ragnar is that, yes, the times can be bad, but the main thing is when the times are good, you need to celebrate as intensely that you feel the bad times as well. So I think I've never seen anyone that gets so excited about small things. But my question to you is that you showed these things that you do sports and you run marathons. I know that you fly planes and you do all these things and you call it relaxation, right? So is there a time when you actually do nothing? Like don't fly planes, don't jump into...
You know, I have tried to basically, like, there's one habit which I think that should be in long run killed, but I sometimes still sleep few hours.
Good one. So that's an advice as well. Sleep sometimes. All right. Thank you very much for this. Thanks. So next one up, we're going to have a story from Eric Migicovsky. I'm going to have you on the stage now. He's actually the guy behind Pebble smartwatches that you definitely know, and actually the most successful Kickstarter project in the history of the world. Also, I was asking for kind of like a thing that you don't know about him and don't know about Pebble. Eric is actually a big fan of cycling, and that's not maybe the main reason, but a reason why you moved from Canada to Netherlands.
Yeah, I actually studied in the Netherlands and learned the joys of cycling every day, like most of the people do in Holland.
Nice. All right, so the stage is yours to tell the story. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much, guys. I just wanted to say thank you to Ragnar, actually. Listening to that, it takes a lot of guts to come on stage at any conference, but to talk about such a serious subject as depression in startups is fantastic. And I just wanted to give another thank you to him because that is quite meaningful. I want to thank you guys for being here, and thanks for the invitation. It's my first time to Estonia. I'm quite familiar with many startups. Actually, one of my good friends is Matthias, who runs the startup Click and Grow. There's a lot of Estonian companies that I live in Palo Alto in Silicon Valley, and I've actually run into a bunch of Estonian companies out there. So it's fantastic to be here in the country, learning about, I guess, what Estonians eat. I'll try my best to pronounce it. Kohuke? Kohuke? It was like the first thing that someone gave to me when I landed here. So, as mentioned, I'm the founder of Pebble. I started this company a number of years ago. Pebble makes smartwatches. Smartwatches being cool digital devices that sit on your wrist and give you a little bit more information about what's happening during your day on your wrist. This is the kind of last generation of Pebbles that came out. I think the way that we differentiated ourselves from, say, the Apple Watch and some of the other smartwatch people out there was Pebble was most like the Swatch of smartwatches. It's fun, it's colorful, it's lightweight, doesn't take itself too seriously, and was a little bit more affordable and accessible than some of the other brands out there. You may know that, as we mentioned, you might know that we actually launched the first Pebble on Kickstarter. We did that when we were still just a company of 3 people and had this idea and wanted to get it out there, but we launched it and announced it on Kickstarter. That managed to go viral, and that was the thing that really boosted us up at the beginning. Over the 4 years after our Kickstarter campaign, we sold over 2 million watches around the world and built a large community of people who are using Pebble. In December, we actually sold the company to Fitbit. But I wanted to take you through actually a little story around not Pebble itself, but the product that we made before Pebble. It started 9 years ago. I was studying industrial design at the University of Waterloo in Canada, but I was actually on an exchange to the Netherlands, cycling every single day, and I had this problem. It's kind of like a very Dutch problem of not wanting to drop your phone in the canal when you were bicycling. So the original idea for Pebble was not actually a smartwatch. It was a little bicycle computer that would show you text messages or phone calls or whatever when you were cycling. And this is me 9 years ago with much less facial hair, working on the original prototype for this. Some people might recognize the Nokia 3310 screen, which I ripped it out of. It was probably the most popular smartphone, most popular phone for a number of years, and it proved to be a great platform for hackers to build new projects. And so I actually just ripped a screen out of it, plugged in an Arduino, and built the very first prototype. Being in Canada, being at the University of Waterloo, not many, I wonder how many people in this room might remember, but there used to be a really popular smartphone called a BlackBerry. Does anyone remember it? Had a little keyboard on the side. The first watch that we actually made, called Impulse, worked exclusively with BlackBerry. It's a kind of a sign of the times that this was back in 2008. We got the first prototype working just by hacking together a little bit more of an advanced version than the first one that I made myself, taking a lot of inspiration at the time from BlackBerry. Didn't prove to be the best decision in the long run, but we rapidly realized after we moved down to the Bay Area in 2011 that there were other smartphones in the world besides BlackBerry, like this thing called an iPhone, which we hadn't really learned about until then. But I wanted to tell you about some of the lessons that we learned during this early process of developing the precursor to Pebble, the first watch that we made. A lot of lessons learned, applicable to both hardware companies as well as non-hardware companies as well. Is anyone working on a hardware startup in the audience? So there's a couple that may share the true pain that is working on a hardware company. We made some pretty serious mistakes in the early days. This was the first prototype that actually looked and felt and worked like the watch that we would go on to make. The biggest mistake that we made at this time was just speed. Remember that first little hack together prototype that I showed you at the beginning? I made that in 2008. We didn't make the first working prototype that actually worked like the watch until 2010. Now, this kind of was a sign of the times that it was more difficult to work on a hardware startup back then, but it was also just kind of this mindset that I think a lot of startups are in the early days, where they want to get it right. They want to make the perfect product, or they want to make something that they're extraordinarily proud of. And I think we just spent too long working on our first prototype, our first kind of working model. If there's one thing that I could change in those early days, if I can go back and talk to Eric from 9 years ago, I would go back and slap him across the head and tell him to go faster. Because we made some decisions in our product development that actually slowed down the whole company dramatically. As some fellow hardware entrepreneurs know, it costs money to make every version of your prototype. And we really, at the early days, over-optimized the cost of the product. So that means we were looking at the BOM cost, or the bill of materials, and we tried to make it as inexpensive as possible. But the problem is we did this at the expense of making the software much more complicated. So we actually took much longer to get to market. Even though it was a cheaper product to make, it took us practically a year longer than we needed to get it to market. And I think looking back, if I could do it again, I would definitely change and maybe spend a little bit more money on the early days of the prototypes and the products, but speed up the software development. The other problem that I had, which I didn't really recognize at the time, was I didn't have a co-founder. I was starting this basically by myself with a collection of friends from university who were helping part-time, working on kind of a consulting or part-time basis. But they weren't full-time, and that was definitely something that contributed to the speed, to the slow speed that we had in the early days. And looking back, if I could have just convinced one of my friends to join the company full-time and to really kind of power through with me alongside, it would have sped that up a lot. So if there's any solo founders in the crowd or people who are considering, should I go and try to find someone else to work on my idea with them, I would give you probably the best advice that would have helped me at the time, that go and find someone, because you're in this for the long haul. It's a marathon, it's not a race. And having someone by your side who can help you every step of the way is just going to be so dramatically useful. So I really, really encourage that. But we managed to stumble our way through, making mistakes constantly, trying to raise money too early. But we finally got to the point where we were actually sharing our product with the world. And this is something that I think we did actually quite well. Everyone who's running a startup knows how difficult it is to get press, to get early PR for your product. So we had a little hack. How many of you guys read gadget blogs, like Engadget or Gizmodo, The Verge, that kind of thing? Have you ever seen the kind of blurry photographs that people have of new products, and it's new Samsung product leaked out in Asia, or prototype of this new device, something? Well, it turns out not all of those are actual leaks. Some of those are actually from the companies that are making those products that leak it to the press for the purposes of getting an article written about them. And at the time, we kind of did this by mistake, but we did this exact thing. This is the first blog post that went up about our first watch, which is called Impulse, the BlackBerry watch. The way that we actually got press was by leaking it to the top BlackBerry blog at the time, which started a kind of trickle-down effect through the blogs that led to the impression that BlackBerry was actually going to make a watch themselves, which was actually would have been a very big deal, much bigger deal than if a startup was making a watch. And so this article actually went viral around the gadget community, simply because people thought BlackBerry. It was like a game of broken telephone. People thought that BlackBerry was going to make a watch, and immediately it became kind of a thing that spread. It was great for us because we were able to get our name out and get the word out about the product without actually kind of building up this story around our company. It helped us a lot. So if you're ever thinking of random hacks to get PR, broaden your mind. There are many ways to get the word out there, and it's super helpful in the early days, as you guys know. The second thing that I think we did, or one of the other things that I think we did really well, again, mostly by accident, was after we finally got that first prototype of the watch working, after we had stumbled our way through hiring problems, contractors who wouldn't deliver code on time, and just a ton of things that we did screw up, one of the things that we did correctly was we actually sold the early versions of our product to end customers. At the time, we were considering giving them away for free to people who were in the community to give us feedback. But we were broke. We didn't have much money left as a company. And so instead of just giving them away for free for people to test, we actually sold them. So this is us in the at the university that I just graduated from. We still had the key codes to the university, so we were able to kind of break in on the weekends and set up an assembly line. So this is us manufacturing the first version of the smartwatch, packaging them up by ourselves, literally putting them in boxes and sending them out by FedEx. But like I said, we were selling these to people. We were charging people money for what was effectively a beta test. I wouldn't even call it a beta. It was more like an alpha test. In fact, out of the first 20 units that we shipped out, five of them, 25%, broke during the shipping process. The backs of the watch blew off, and all the electronics kind of spilled out. And so I think not only were we learning just about the shipping process of how you actually get these units out the door, when customers, these early customers actually got the product and put it on their wrist, they cared a lot more about the product because they had put their hard-earned money down on the table and gave us $150 each for this. So their feedback came, I guess you could say it came much quicker, and it came with a lot more impact to us. We maintained, I basically maintained an individual one-to-one connection with the first 100 users of the product. They all had my email address. If there was ever any problems with the product, I would get an email. I would get many emails. And those customers, the people who purchased the product in the early days, actually became our long-term both supporters, advocates, and sources of feedback. This was back in 2010. I still receive emails from some of the people in this first 100 group today, even after Pebble. So I would never underestimate the usefulness of actually selling your early versions of the product and getting it into people who are paying, because again, their feedback means a lot. So in a little bit of a summary, I'd say move faster. If you think you're moving fast right now, it's not fast enough. Launch early, launch often. There's absolutely no harm in having a launch and having a failed launch and trying again. One thing to remember about your startup is that, even though you obviously care a lot about the impression that you're making on the world and your perception in the industry, I'm sorry to break it to you, 99.99% of people in the world have no idea who you are, and they're completely blank slates. And so every time you launch your product, every time you get the word out there, every time you introduce a new product into the world, it's another chance to convince some small percentage more of people that your product is interesting and that they should care. So there's no stigma. Don't worry about a failed launch or a launch that didn't go as perfect as you would have hoped. There's always another opportunity. And my point about paying customers, I think I made that, but it is, in my opinion, one of the most valuable early ways to get feedback. And lastly, one of my greatest benefits of working on a startup was figuring out a way to include puns in advertising. So we, as a watch company, managed to include a number of what we thought at the time were awkward and terrible puns in our advertising. But always look for the fun side of doing your company. There's always a couple things that you can do that are kind of out there. Anyways, thank you very much. I appreciate your attention, and thanks again.
Thank you, Eric. Really good, really good. Really inspirational story. Amazing speech. I love amazing speeches, don't you? So I read from the schedule that you're ex-Pebble, and I know that Pebble was sold. Why did you sell it, and why X?
So we over the course of 8.5 years of working on Pebble, learned a tremendous amount about the wearable industry. We were the first people to launch a smartwatch back in 2012, the first kind of bigger smartwatch launch. But what we also learned about the industry is that the real reason why people were buying wearables was actually due to health and wellness. We noticed that because we actually had an app store on Pebble, and there were the most number of people who were using apps were actually using fitness, health apps like Runkeeper, Strava, Fitbit. And we realized that in order to reach kind of the true potential for this, we needed to move faster, again, on the health and wellness side of the business. We made a mistake. We were way too late in adding health features to our product. We added them at the end of 2015, instead of back in 2012 when we first announced the product. We were finding it hard to compete in the industry. There were a couple other players that were growing, like Apple. And so at the end of 2016, we decided to look for a buyer, and we were very pleased to find a home inside Fitbit, bringing our SDK and the technology that we had worked on to the tens of millions of Fitbit devices that are out there today.
I have one.
Yeah.
But what do you do today?
I'm working at Y Combinator. I'm a visiting partner at Y Combinator, which is actually the incubator that brought us down to the Bay Area in the first time. So if you're thinking about great incubators to apply to, I would heavily encourage applying to YC, which is an incubator that takes startups in the Bay Area twice a year. We're just doing one batch now in the summer. The next application season is in October. So if you're considering a move to the Bay Area, please, I would encourage you to apply to YC.
Let's take a couple of questions from the audience as well. Anybody, raise a hand. They'll throw you a mic. I see. Look, behind you. There. No, there was a lady there with a hat. Yes. Excellent. Speak into the black knob, please. Yes.
My question is about Ragnar Sass, actually.
What?
The speaker.
Okay.
As you could see, Estonia is rather small, and if you fail big, because everybody knows. And what do you say to people who live in Estonia and try to start up, and if you launch often and you fail often, then
It's a really good question. So Ragnar was touching on this point towards the end of his talk. It's up to us. It's up to the community. It's up to every individual to support your friends, to give people the benefit of the doubt. Here's actually so I actually did not start in the Bay Area. I started in Canada in a small startup ecosystem, very similar, where you know everybody, your friends work at other startups, and if you're in the news, hopefully it's a good thing, but if it's a bad thing, everyone will hear about it. And one of the things that I thought was most interesting about the Bay Area when I came down there was this optimism that you don't always find in other cities around the world, like Waterloo and potentially Tallinn, I don't know. But it's an optimism that drives people to say, instead of why your startup won't work, it's giving people the optimistic, the possibility that, yeah, maybe it's a crazy idea, but who am I to say that it's not going to work?
Exactly.
And I think that attitude is one of the really valuable things that's present in the Bay Area. And it's just an idea that, you know what, even though I think it's a stupid idea, or I don't think it's a great idea, maybe I'm wrong. And I think investors need to adopt this philosophy. I think I talk to a lot of early stage investors, and there's always a ton of people who are like, well, I can think of 10 reasons why it's not going to be successful. So maybe the next time you're talking to someone who's gone through a tough spot or had a tough launch, try to think of 2 or 3 reasons why they are going to be successful. And it might be hard, might take a little bit of time to think about this, but challenge yourself, because it opens your mind and will probably make you a stronger founder to begin with.
Why can this work?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Eric.
Thank you.
There's a little something for
appreciate
you to remind you of Estonia.
Thanks very much.
This was very good. The next person on the stage is a person who learned coding after he dropped out from university. He also was sued because of the coding later by a Finnish gambling monopoly. Please welcome on the stage the founder of Wolt, Elias. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. I'm gonna make a personal risk here and see if I can open this. If I can't, yeah, there we go. Hello, I'm Elias. I'm one of the founders of Wolt. Let's not oversell ourselves. I'm in charge of our consumer products, and today I'll talk about things, and you can make notes or forget about them. Who knows what Wolt is? Who has ever used it? Oh my God! We've made it in Estonia, apparently, in these circles. Thanks a lot. Awesome. So we hail from the northern land of Finland, and we are a startup that is centered around restaurant food. We help you discover the best restaurants in your city and help you order from them, whether it's food that is delivered to you or whether you want to pick it up yourself or later eat in the restaurant as well. One thing that is, by the way, special to food startups, they say, no pain, no gain. In food startups, it goes the other way around. First you gain the weight, then the pain comes later when they put stairs there and you get exhausted by 3 steps. I think I've gained like 15 kilograms in the last 2 years working on Wolt. It's horrible what easy access to food does to you. But our story. So we're 6 co-founders, and all of us are men. When we started in our mid-20s and whatnot. And well, the thing about men in mid-20s is there's a life and death situation. You've moved out of your childhood home, and you are starving because you don't know how to cook. And so you start thinking, where can I get food? And then you're like, well, actually, food. We could do a company around that thing, because it's very survival instinct kind of thing. And so we were like, yeah, let's do something around food, because apparently no one's doing it, right? Especially no one's doing it in this brand new age of mobile phones. So there were like these companies that were the older generation, doing like websites where you could order pizza or whatever. We were like, we're going to be the first company to do this on a mobile phone. Yeah, we did very thorough background checking, yeah. So there's 6 of us, and 6 is a very good number when you want to order beer for the get-togethers, because the beer comes in like increments of 6, like 6 or 24. It's an even number. It's a very good number there. But, and here's the first point, do not have 6 co-founders in your company. It's a bad idea. I mean, it's good in many ways. I mean, we are still like, there's no breakups here or anything. This is a boring story. But the thing about 6 co-founders is people need to agree on things, kinda, because they're all co-founders, right? So for example, coming up with a name. Okay, so we meet first time early 2014. The company is founded in the autumn 2014. What did you do for 6 months? Well, we were fighting over the name. Okay? My personal favorite was Hindenburg. That came out of Zeppelin, but that was already taken, so we... Anyway, this was, by the way, the winner of our all street gallops. We went to people, you know, which of these names is best? Hindenburg. And we're like, yes, that's the name. But by the time we figured out the name, we realized that, oh shit, there's so many companies doing this thing. And the thing is, if you look here, 2014 early, like these companies, yeah, they were founded, but they didn't really operate like in a big way. And this doesn't even include Foodora or Deliveroo or Uber Eats, but also those were just tiny local players at that point. So this thing has really heated up since. And of course, there's like a bunch of these companies actually are like unicorn status these days. A bunch of these have already folded. So it's an interesting, very, very heated market. So yeah, after a year or so from forming the company, a bit before that, initially we launched a product where you could just order the food. We didn't do delivery. But then we realized that we were hoping that someone would just do this delivery part. We could concentrate on the software, and someone would do the human stuff where stuff gets moved around. But it turned out that no one was really doing it as a service in a meaningful way. So one of our competitors moved into our market, and we're like, oh shit. They're now doing delivery of all the restaurant food. So in 2 weeks, we're like, yes, let's do our own delivery. And we hacked it together and opened up a platform where you can become a delivery partner. So these days, a big part of our business is our own delivery platform as well. These days, Wolt is in 4 countries. So Finland, Sweden, Estonia, Denmark, and in 10 cities in those countries. We have around 1,000 restaurants, thousands of courier partners working on the platform, and we're currently at run rate doing in the millions of orders a year. So it's been pretty good. We've raised close to 15 million in funding. A point about that, by the way, I did something similar to this in my previous company, but we didn't have funding, so we ended up spending a couple of $100,000 of our own money failing. And then it was like, well, next time it would be interesting to fail with someone else's money. Damn it, we didn't as hard. Yeah. The thing about VC funding is, of course, it kind of puts limitations on you. You have to move crazy fast, or otherwise the boys are like, well, you only grew 10,000% this year. That's not enough. So, yeah, it's a bit crazy. Anyway. So we are a mobile company, first and foremost. So we first shipped an iOS application, then we did an Android one, and then we also branched out to the web, mostly mobile web. And there are some strange things about mobile application business that I just want to point out here. This is an old screenshot, but it basically looks the same exact thing these days. So these are the top grossing applications, the applications that make most money. If you're interested in money, and hopefully at some point entrepreneurs are, you can't be pre-revenue forever. You go to App Store and like, who is making the money? And then you're like, well, it's interesting. And then I took another screenshot a week later, and there's just the orders changed a bit, and a new game comes in, Clash Royale. And then you start thinking, well, wait a minute. Like, the only way to make money on App Store is to have an icon with a yelling man on it, apparently. And one of them is actually worth more than all the music in the world. So in mobile, a game, probably Clash Royale was initially, Clash of Clans was done by a like 6-7 person team initially. And it's worth more than all the music in the world that was done by, 10 million people or something. And there's many of those. There's like 1, 2, 3 Angry Man. By the way, if you ever wonder why one of the Supercell's games isn't making as much money, Boom Beach, number 21. Does he look angry? No, he does not. I mean, if they change that to a yelling man, I see a 10-fold increase in revenue. So it's not that, like, games make crazy good money. It's like everything else makes super bad money. Like, it's very hard to monetize people these days in terms of anything else except games, where you can really drive the the narcotics into the person and like make him super addicted to your game and pay anything to play more. And then you're stuck with even music. Even Netflix has like all the best shows. HBO now all make less money. And then you start looking. By the way, how many casino games do you see there? Like 1, 2, 3. Those casino games, you can't win in them. It's because they don't do gambling. So you play and you put money in, but you can't ever get money out. And those games are still making hundreds of millions a year. And so, like, if you want to do money on the App Store, games is kind of the only way. Anything else doesn't really monetize. But then you're like, well, I've heard of this company called Uber, and it's supposedly very big. Where is that? Well, obviously, it doesn't do its money through in-app purchases, so it's not listed on the top grossing list. But it's actually way, way bigger than any of those companies in terms of revenue. Uber is scary big. It's scary big because it's our competitor also. You know how many people have ever driven an Uber, like behind the wheel? This is a year-old figure. It was 2 million back then. 2 million people have driven one of them, not ridden, driven one of them as a profession. And this is the list of all the employers in the world, the biggest ones. And the first commercial one after all the armies is Walmart at 2.1 million. So Uber is massive. Of course, they are not driving full-time all the time, but unique people driving in the millions. And there's a reason for that. So, and this is one thing that we looked at when we were founding our company, is this chart. I'm getting to a point here, finally. Is where does all the money go? The millennial version of this graph is apparently avocado sandwiches, avocado toast. Apparently, we all spend our money there, so we can't afford real estate. Real estate is super cheap these days. But anyway, so housing is the biggest portion of spending. Transportation is the second one. And then the third one is basically food. And then the tiny thing there, 5%, entertainment. And this includes all the freaking games, all the music, all the TV shows, all the whatever on the top grossing list is basically under that 5%. And at that point, I'm like, well, we're not that competitive market. Because, like, how many of those new mobile services really target that 12% of spending compared to how many of those are in the gaming sector targeting that 5% spend? And that includes books and movies and everything, so, right? And then you realize, well, Uber is actually that 17%, and it's kind of, well, there's many others, but it's kind of winning that, at least in the Western world. And then there's housing, and you're like, oh, Airbnb, man. So, I mean, there are companies in these big money spending sectors, but not so many. So if you're thinking about founding a company, maybe go that direction. I just realized, by the way, that I'm running out of time. But we'll discuss this point too, which is technology. So we say we're like a mobile payments company in a way as well. And people think of this. They're like, yes, you do these NFC payments, right? I think that's the most ridiculous piece of technology ever created. Why would you rub your phone against the terminal? Are you trying to make fire? Like, how is that better than a credit card? The credit card doesn't run out of battery. So we are very skeptical about technology. When we build something using the old stuff that is known to work. Our service could have been built 8 years ago, the same way. No difference. But now I think the time is ripe for it. People are willing to use it, and that's the important part. Another quick point about technology. This is more about the experience, right? So we concentrate on the user experience a lot. This is a photo I took from IKEA. You notice those buttons that are so worn out that you can't even see what's being dispensed? I have a secret for you. They are not buttons. You know, the levers here, that's where you get your drink. Pushing on that does nothing. So you build these products, and you build them with love, and it's awesome, and you don't have time for user testing in the beginning, so you ship them out. And then people start pressing on that thing. And I think these people have been making the same model for tens of years, probably, and never fixed that, because they rolled out the new flavors, and they just put no stickers on them. But we try to do that, so it always hurts you when you make a product, and then people are like, and they are right, and you're always wrong, and there's no way around it. So when you're building any kind of startup, you're going to be wrong all the time. So better get used to it. And then I have one final point about building companies, and this is the hardest one, which is this. There's an error on this slide, by the way. Who can spot it out? Those are Duplos, not Legos. I mean, come on. Obvious. Yeah, so we are 6 co-founders. 3 of us were building the product. I was I was the only iOS developer we had for 2.5 years. So if you use the iOS application, it was done by me. Yay. It's hard, because then you realize that, well, actually, we need so much software that you can never scale yourself. You can just, you have to stop coding. You have to get others. It's not your baby anymore. You have to get others to do our baby that we're building. And first of all, it's sometimes hard to let go. And you have to, if your company is successful and it starts growing, you have to give others the chance to build your dream. And the second part is, are you any good at that? And that's a big question. So a lot of co-founders go through the pain where they're like losing control because they are not built for that chief operating officer, or chief technology officer, or whatever role. They're good at what they did in the beginning of the company, and they will be good at doing that forever. So, I mean, some of our co-founders are actually still just coding, and there's now layers on top of them. Some of us are struggling to sort of, yeah, I'll still want to keep my control. So I've actually moved more away from development and actually look at the consumer products. But this is a painful process that will happen to you if your company happens to succeed and grow, that you have to give away your Legos and find a new role in the company in the path you're taking. Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to puff one more thing. If you haven't had lunch yet, there is Hungry Carl or something like that, a food truck in the food court where you can order with Wolt. And if you haven't ever ordered before, now you can register today using the Latitude59 promo code, and you will get €7 off your first purchase. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Elias. Do we have some questions from the audience? Yes, let's wait for a box to be thrown at you.
Yeah, okay, does it work? Yeah. So you mentioned you're in 10 cities right now.
Yes.
And relatively small cities, I'd say. What if the big competition kicks in? Ubers, Foodoras, so on. What's going to happen then?
Excuse me, what was the... Yeah, I heard everything else except the verb, like...
Okay, so what happens when the competition kicks in?
Oh, what happens when that kicks in? So, so in Helsinki, we've been, in our sort of home market, we've been with Foodora for the past 2 years. So they came in very early. We essentially had no sales before they came. I think we are like 2 to 3 times larger than they are in our home market. Yes, home market. Yay, easy. Okay. Of course, it limits us. I mean, there's no way we could go to London at the moment. We have 15 million raised. They have, like, Uber has 3 billion to spend. And they do it. They spend a lot. So we have to be a bit more strategic in where we go. We cannot go head-to-head in big cities because they will just outspend us. But we also diverging the product in a way that allows us to conquer those cities later. So we're not just, because the others are just solely concentrated on delivery, right? They're like, delivery is the future of food. And we feel that a lot of the restaurant owners didn't sign up to be restaurant owners so they could be a kitchen. They'd rather be a restaurant. And we want to enable them to be a restaurant in the end, and also drive people to experience the food there, and also as takeaway. So we believe it's not all about delivery in the end.
Thank you. Anyone else for a question to Elias? Well, then I want to thank you from Latitude 59 to coming on stage and sharing your story.
Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot.